The countdown to the release of more Jeffrey Epstein files is underway. The U.S. Justice Department has less than a month now to provide them. Congress passed a bill this week almost unanimously ordering the files be made public, which U.S. President Donald Trump then signed off on. For many Epstein survivors, it was a moment of relief, one they had waited for years. My next guest is one of those survivors. Jess Michaels joins us now. She met Epstein in 1991. And a warning for our viewers, some of what we may discuss you may find disturbing. And just for you, I appreciate that this may be difficult for you to discuss, and I appreciate your time with joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. We really appreciate anyone that's willing to hear the survivor stories.
Of course. And Jess, it's after decades of waiting. The Justice Department now has fewer than 30 days, really, to release those Epstein files. What does this moment feel like for you?
It's filled with complexity of emotions because I've hit every range of overwhelm to numb to exhilarated and empowered to even being filled with rage that it's taken this long. Maria Farmer reported for the very first time in 1996. And I think it's not going to hit us fully for a while. Until we see the files released, I think we're going to be a little bit cautiously optimistic going forward.
You know, certainly for survivors, we've heard that it has felt like this marathon fight or battle to try and get transparency here. This is one of the steps that has now been accomplished. What comes next, and how are you feeling about that ongoing countdown that is now underway?
That's a really good phrase. We especially have felt like the last 3.5, 4 months have been this nonstop marathon of sharing our stories as publicly as possible so that we can get to the point where the government hears us, and that it took an actual act of Congress to get us heard and in front of the president to agree to releasing the files. We're really hoping and hopeful that the files will be released. Our next steps are a 30-day pressure campaign. We are not stopping. We're not resting. Well, we're trying to rest, I shouldn't say. We're trying to rest for a short period of time, but we are not going to just settle with what has happened this past week. We know we have 30 days of continued pressure on this government to make sure they do the right thing.
You know, there's been a lot of questions about whether or not, despite the fact that this bill, this Transparency Act was passed, that despite the fact that the president has signed off on it, that there may still be hurdles when it comes to the full transparency of those Epstein files and what might be redacted. How hopeful are you that everything will come out into the public?
I'm very hopeful for a few reasons. I'm very hopeful because we've spoken to so many attorneys' offices that are not even representing Epstein survivors that are waiting to sift through all of the documentation. Third-party attorneys not involved anywhere with the government, with any of us. So we know that many people are on top of this and waiting. We know our stories. So whatever comes out, if it doesn't align with what we know to be true, we know that there are 302 reports in there, our victim statements that are in there that need to be released. The third thing is that we know that the American people, and actually the whole world, is behind us. And that gives us a level of trust and confidence that is almost indescribable.
Has there been, to that point, has there been anything about the public reaction that has surprised you? Certainly there has been a lot of support, and it has been a story, no doubt, that has been covered a lot. There's so much interest in what happens with these files and whether or not they will, in fact, be released in the end. But has there been anything that surprised you about how people have reacted to all of this?
Yes, I'm still shocked at the victim blaming. And you would think that those not believing the stories of the sexual assault survivors, where even the FBI has said there's over 1,000, You would think that with the victim blaming, the idea of the release of the files would be something that everyone would want. So it's interesting to hear victim blaming on the side of people that are trying to suppress the actual files. So that's shocking to me.
And I'm sure, like many survivors, you are anxiously awaiting to see when those documents are released and to go through them. I'm wondering, in terms of future implications when it comes to these sorts of cases. Jeffrey Epstein was convicted as a sex offender, as a sex trafficker as well. Do you believe that what we're seeing happen in regards to this case may open the door for other survivors in cases like this to see some form of justice?
Yes, I do believe that we're opening a door that could shift culture. I believe that what we are seeing is a demand from the masses that they are tired, that there are two sets of justice. One that is for the elite and one that is for everyone else. And I think the majority is saying no more.
Jess, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with our viewers.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Jess Michaels. She is an Epstein survivor. Thank you for joining us today.